Thank you to our channel sponsors, Jet.Build. If you're looking for ways to better manage your real estate development and construction projects, look no further. Jet is the command center software for end-to-end real estate development and construction management. That's www.jet.build. Kevin, welcome to the show, man.
Thanks, man. Appreciate it, Adam. I appreciate the opportunity.
Absolutely. I appreciate us getting this sorted last minute. Being a new dad and all, I'm a bit in the scramble, so I appreciate you for hopping on. That was awesome.
No worries. Sleep deprived. I know, I get it. You got all that going for you, right?
Totally. Where were you calling in from? Where's home base for you?
I am in Rockwall, Texas right now. That is where home is.
Awesome.
Yep.
Where's that? Where's like the nearest, like major cities for context?
Dallas. I'm like 30 minutes from Dallas, 30 minutes east of Dallas.
Awesome. A lot going on there, no?
Dude, so much traffic, so much construction, a lot of work, a lot of stuff.
Yeah. The work's a good thing. Traffic, not so fun.
No.
Right, exactly. All right, so we're going to kick off with our first two questions. Let's start off, given that the hat you're wearing, the plug there, the dad hat. When your son becomes of age or any time between now and then and tells you he wants to join service, what do you do? How do you react?
Oh God, you would ask me that, right at the gate. So yeah, it's a tough question because, we serve and it's almost like some of us feel that we did it right, so our kids don't have to. And there's different circumstances. You want to make your kid's environment better than yours growing up. That's our whole goal as parents. But in the same breath, I think my son, if he has a calling to serve, I think that is hugely important to support. Whether my opinion of me not wanting him to do that, that shouldn't matter, right? So I would support him, but I would definitely say all the things that I wish somebody would have just kind of set me down and walked me through to give me some perspective, But yeah, I would do that. I would support him, and I would have to talk my wife off the ledge, I think. So
sure.
That would be the tough one.
You know what's interesting about that, kind of like the back end of what you said in terms of information. I recall when I joined, the means of finding what's what units are what, how you should train, what life is like. I mean, it was reading through ridiculous threads of websites that probably don't even exist anymore. And today you have podcasts like what we're on right now, right? So information's abundant. How do you envision that like making any difference?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I was not well informed at all when I joined the Mill. I mean, I called the Navy asking about joining the Coast Guard. So if that tells you anything, like I had no idea. Of course, the Navy was like, absolutely, come on in. We'll show you how to do that. But I think these kids now, when they go into a recruiter office, I can't imagine that recruiters probably got the hardest job in the world now because they know exactly what's what.
Exactly. Yep.
There's videos, there's movies, there's videos on boot camp. I never saw boot camp before I got to boot camp.
Yep.
And boy, was it a culture shock. But I think that does make a difference. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Huge.
Yeah. I think about it all the time. It's so interesting to see how the information element has shifted so drastically.
So crazy.
Yeah.
So crazy.
Moving on, we're going to get into our second question is, culturally speaking, when we see veterans enter civilian space, civilian workforce, naturally there's a culture gap and vice versa, right? For civilians to veterans as well. How do you see us better bridging that culture gap?
I think we've started to make, we've turned the corner a little bit on that. We've made veterans protected classes within workforces, which I think is huge because that was really getting lost in the workspace, is that veterans, especially in this landscape now, combat vets, or just any vet for that matter that spends time in the military, they have specific needs in the civilian world that are different. And I think employers are starting to get smart on that. I think there's things like, the Skill Bridge program that is teaching employers about the needs of a veteran. what a DD-214 looks like, VA programs, things like that, that most civilians are like, I have no idea what that is. So I think we're going in the right step, but I think there's still a lot of work to be done because there's some assumptions
Yeah.
with employers and veterans. And I think it's up to the veterans that are in the workforce to really take an active role in that. You know, it's not, as much as I love care packages, I don't think that is the thing that really truly helps veterans, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think we got to look for more programs like Skill Bridge, a broader kind of approach to that. That's still, it's a great program, but it's still pretty small when you're thinking about what 200,000 veterans
Mm-hmm.
transfer from military to civilian life every year.
Mm-hmm.
Like that is a lot of people that we've got to learn how to tap into for the workforce.
Totally.
So yeah, I mean, we've came a long way, but we definitely have a long way to go.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. If employers, generally speaking, especially larger companies, can kind of do that top-down information approach, I agree. I mean, that I can see that making a huge difference, a huge impact, holistically for civilians and vets.
Absolutely.
Yeah, well put.
Absolutely.
Awesome, man. So everybody starts off with an introduction. Going to roll with yours. Kevin Braziel served for over 20 years on active duty in the U.S. Navy, finishing his service as a chief petty officer. During his time in service, Kevin completed multiple combat deployments. Today, he's a project executive with McGough Construction, currently overseeing the Behavioral Health Replacement Hospital project. Kevin is also a major advocate for the Skill Bridge program and helping veterans transition into careers across the construction industry, an initiative that's now being leveraged at McGough. And most importantly, Kevin is a proud dad. So Kevin, you really, I tried to build that up a little bit. You're really too humble on the information you provided. So I'm excited to, get into your career and elaborate a little bit on that intro. But before we get there, let's start off with childhood, where you grew up and what childhood was like for you.
So I grew up in Wichita Falls, Texas, which is
Mm-hmm.
about 2.5 hours from where I'm at now, 2.5 hours northwest of Dallas. And it's actually where that hospital project is
Amazing.
located. Yeah. So it's crazy how I ended up there. But
Yeah.
grew up there, come from very humble beginnings, if you will, very no money at all,
Mm-hmm.
a lot of struggles, had a very incredible mom that worked two jobs. She I can't ever think of a moment that she wasn't hustling, wasn't working.
Yeah.
I think my work ethic came from her, just watching
Mm-hmm.
doing what she did. I knew that college was not a thing for me growing up, like that was not even heard of.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so very early, probably 14, 15 years old, I was like, well, I can either go work in the oil field or I could join the military. So I did a summer as a worm in the oil field, and right then and there, I was like, the military's got to be better than this. I was like, I don't want any part of that. So that's what as a teenager, I ended up going right in. And yeah, I was just like anyone else. I mean, I joined in the 90s. I didn't go in going, you know what? I want to join to serve my country, patriotic. No, I want to go because I needed money for school. I needed to get out of my parents' house. My stepdad said, hey, you got about 90 days to figure this out when you graduate. So you basically got a 90-day eviction notice. And I needed some discipline. I knew that I was going to have to be forced into that, right? At least I had enough self-awareness then. So I did join the Navy, came in as a CB. It's where I started my career, was in construction electrician. And, it was incredible because I didn't, again, I didn't think that I would ever do anything more than my first enlistment.
Mm-hmm.
But there was something magical about that environment, that camaraderie that I'd never felt before. I mean, I was an athlete, pretty good athlete growing up. It felt a little bit like that, you know. But when you, especially when you got into the more special operations world, leading into that, that felt even more like a small unit dynamic, small team, something I really,
Mm-hmm.
really enjoyed. Um, and I'd be remiss if I said I enjoyed combat. I did not. That was never something I was like, "Ooh, I can't wait to go do that." It was just a product of my time in service.
Mm-hmm.
Initial invasion was there, 2004, Fallujah. I mean, just so on and so forth.
Mm-hmm.
Was not much of an Afghanistan guy. I was more of an Iraq guy and Horn of Africa guy. But um, that those experiences, I'm telling you, like from where I am now to going back then, I mean, I can directly relate a lot of things that happen every day to moments that happened in those crazy environments.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but yeah, so I did my time. I had this intention I was going to do. I was like, you know what, I'm going to do as long as I'm just going to wait till they just kick me out where I just can't do anymore. My wife, she finally said, well, where are our options? Where can we go? And there was like a couple of options. Both were terrible. And my wife's like, I don't, I don't want to go either one of those places. She said, can you retire?
Mm-hmm.
And I said, yeah, I guess. And that right there created immediate panic for me.
Sure.
I was not mentally ready to retire. I didn't know what I was going to do. I got a degree in construction. Well, back then, construction technology. Now it's construction management. But I got a degree knowing that I wanted to do construction, which I didn't really do a lot of that in the military. But I knew I wanted to do that. That was kind of where I started my career. My grandfather was a carpenter. But I didn't really know how to do it, to be quite honest with you. And so I went into panic mode.
So I
And
want to I want to
yeah,
pause you there because I want to expand, going way back to the beginning. Um, First of all, how did military even come on your radar to begin with? Right, like I understood the dynamic that you're in. Nonetheless, a lot of people don't even think of military as an option.
for me, I'll be honest, it was an easy button for me, right? Like
Mm,
down the street, there was a recruiting
mm,
station. Actually, back up there, I'll tell you kind of funny story. I actually applied. I put in a package to go to prison guard school to be a Texas prison guard. And it was like a boot camp down in Beeville, Texas. And I went and I remember having to fill out all these paperwork and do this typing test. And I never heard back from them, right? And so my next option was like, well, I can do the military. That's probably pretty easy to join.
mm.
But then I found out years later, my mother got that package in the mail. She threw it away. She's like, my son's not gonna be a prison guard. But joke's on her. I joined the military instead,
Right.
which she would argue was probably worse.
Yeah.
Um, but anyway, so it was for me growing up as a really poor kid. It's like you had this thing. It's like if you wanted to make money, right? You either had to go work for a factory or some sort.
Mm-hmm.
You had to go in the oil field, be a prison guard, join the military. That was kind of
Mm-hmm.
the options in the wrong side of the tracks, if you will.
Right. Were
And
people around you joining the military as well, or not even?
no, I'm the only one from my graduating class, and I was not. I went to Iowa Park High School, which was a small school. It's a
Mm,
small town right outside of Wichita Falls, and as far as I know, I don't not it's not 100%. I'm the only one that actually joined and retired. I think
yeah.
some might have joined reserve, some probably did some active tours, but it was not something I ever talked about. Never saw a Navy recruiter
Mm,
in the office, and really, I didn't necessarily want to join the Navy. I I went. It was the old strip mall where you had all of them lined up. You had the Marine Corps, all that. So I actually went to the Marines first, and when I walked in, they started screaming, and I was like, "No thanks." Just walked right back out. I was like, "I'm not doing this." And of course, the Air Force was not there. They were. I don't know what they were doing. Um, the Army I didn't want to join just because there was a base pretty close to us.
mm,
And I didn't want to end up in Lawton, Oklahoma. That was my biggest
sure.
fear, which is like 30 minutes from my house.
Mm-hmm.
And then Shepherd Air Force Base too. Air Force was always spoke about you. If you want a nice, relaxing career in the military, in the Air Force, where you go. And I get to the Navy really I initially I'd called them earlier about the Coast Guard, and I have no idea how to join the Coast Guard. I don't know how to do that. To this day, I still don't know how to do that. And I walked to the Navy office, and there was a recruiter in the back asleep, and there was a guy in the front desk, like rubbing his head, taking Tylenol, drinking water. And it was like a Wednesday. Like they're all hungover. And I was like, well, this is probably my speed. This might be where I need to be at. So yeah, that was, I kind of brought it on my radar, really, just knowing my options. And yeah, that was, after going through all of that MEP stuff and having to tell the recruiter, asked, what do you want to do? I was like, I don't care, but I don't want to go on a ship. And he was like, this is the Navy, right? You know that. I was like, there's got to be other stuff, right? And you know what? I never went on a boat. I
Wow.
never did any. I was a dirt sailor. I mean, I was in the dirt. I found out later that I kind of regret that when you're in Iraq and you see these fleet sailors come into theater to replenish with whatever, and they smell like a shower,
Right.
and we smell like death. I was
Yeah.
like, man, I kind of wish I would have done that now.
Well, end of the
Yeah.
day, you were right. You didn't go on a ship. That's
I
pretty
did not.
wild.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
that came with a price.
Sure. Yeah, of course. So
Yeah.
cool to hear that you kind of found your culture by just bouncing across those offices in that strip mall
Mhm.
environment. That's a pretty wild story. So walk us through a little bit what like literally just enlisting was like and getting to your first assignment with the CBs.
So for me, it was, MEPS. I had to go to MEPS a couple of different times. I had knee surgery in high school, so I had to get waivers and stuff. So that wasn't too terrible. Um, and then yeah, I mean, I was in the the delayed entry program for a bit, and then went off to boot camp. That was a complete culture shock for me. Of course, as most people, and Navy boot camp back then was probably harder than it is now, but it still wasn't. I actually don't remember it being difficult. I just remember eating and marching a lot. That's really all I remember. And night of arrival, right? I remember that because I had this like short Filipino chief that was like losing his mind on people. And I was like, I've made a mistake. I should not be here. Yeah, I was
That's
like,
why you
this
didn't
is
go to the Marine route.
right. Yeah. I don't, so, but I get there, you go through all that stuff, and I I found boot camp. It became kind of fun. It was just kind of a game, really. And I was young, and I ended up becoming they call it the RPOC, the Recruit Chief Petty Officer. In the way that boot camp works in the Navy, anyways, it's basically the last one that gets picked. After they fire like three or four, you kind of end up with it. And so I was very, very blessed there. I got meritorious promoted out of boot camp. Um, went to Port Hueneme, California, to the Construction Battalion Center. Went to NMCB4. First deployment was Puerto Rico, which you could not ask for much more than that. I remember that was my first time ever flying. Like, it's not even out of the country, it's U.S. territory, but that was like the longest flight I've ever been on. I show up middle of the day, like on a Friday, and they actually had that weekend off. I slept from being jet lagged. I woke up and it was like a college party. Like, I mean, there was like mattresses on fire. I mean, it was madness. And I was like, well, maybe I do want to do 20 years in this. I mean, this looks pretty fun. So the CVs are absolutely an incredible organization, and they have such a incredible history. I mean, the SEALs, the UDT guys all came from that space. They came from the CVs. They all started in World War II with a bunch of old construction men building America, building skyscrapers, and they were bred out of a necessity from Admiral Morale. He was like, I've got to arm my construction workers so they cannot be taken hostage again. And so that's what happened. So that type of grit kept getting passed on to generations of CVs, on and on and on. And that was a really comfortable space for me because I came from, construction family. I came from a family that had a lot of grit, and that had a lot of resilience and adaptability. And the CVs, like you have to watch your stuff because they'll steal anything. Like, I mean, we are known for tactically acquiring whatever we can to make stuff work. I've seen it. I've done it.
Fair enough.
And it's funny because I would tell those stories to old Seabees and they would tell me a story exactly like that from like Vietnam. You know, the
That's
things that they
awesome.
did there. Yeah. So did that. I went to, you know, and while I was in Puerto Rico, went to Antarctica. That was pretty neat to do this retrograde of the Operation Deep Freeze, and then went to Croatia during their whole civil war, Bosnia,
Hmm.
that whole thing.
Hmm.
And that was my first experience with leadership, really, other than like a football team,
Hmm.
is I led 3 men for a camp maintenance thing on the special operations, like Green Beret SF camp.
Hmm.
And my main job was I had to burn, I don't know if can I say shit?
Yeah. Yeah.
I had to burn shit, human
Hmm.
shit,
Hmm.
twice a day. So I'd have to take these 3 men, walk down this hill with like a homemade ore
Yep.
and some JP8, pour it in this thing, catch it on fire, and stir it till it disappears. I mean, this was demoralizing. I mean,
Yep.
it was terrible. But one day we were burning this shit, and this sergeant major, this like GI Joe looking dude. I mean, this guy was like shoulders like this. I mean, he was a monster of a man. Had like a scar on his face. Like he looked like a villain. You know what I mean? Like one of those like. But he was incredible human being. He came down there and he sat down. I'll never forget. He sat on his bucket and and explained to us men why what we were doing was so important to the mission.
Mm.
Like, hey, he said, you know, I understand what you're doing is not fun. Like it's terrible. He's like, but did you realize how important what you're doing is? He said, what you guys do that keeps my men safe and healthy,
Hmm.
which allows them to fight. And if they're not healthy, they can't fight. If they can't fight, we don't win. And that's just not what America does. He's like, so I would argue what you men are doing is probably the most important mission on its face. That moment that he spent with us changed my whole leadership trajectory, the way I
Mm.
thought, because he gave me a purpose. He gave me a why, because it was
Hmm.
um, the limbic brain, right? You couldn't define what he was trying to say in words. It was a feeling
Hmm.
of belonging, of purpose. I knew how to do what I was doing. I knew what I was doing, but I damn sure did not know why I was doing it.
Hmm.
I just thought, well, shit. I mean, we just drew the bad straw, right? Like it
Right.
just sucks. But that moment, I mean, I was the best shit burner on the planet from then on out, you know, because I had the purpose, but it helped me lead better, right?
Hmm.
Like it taught me something that I carry with me in the civilian world is that task and purpose.
Hmm.
Like I'm going to ask people to do some terrible things, some hard things.
Hmm.
In the military, I had to do that often. But if I let them know why they're doing that, now, of course, when bullets are flying, you can't, right? But when you can, you should,
Hmm.
because that's what motivates them. The why is the purpose moment.
Hmm.
So that was kind of my first experience. I mean, it was a very impactful time of my life. You know, I was a kid trying to figure things out, never been away from home. I was a big mama's boy, you know, and here I am trying to be a man in a very much of a man's world.
Hmm.
You know, my first command master chief was a Vietnam vet, and he was nuts. I'll never forget that guy. Like this guy was nuts. Like we would be doing field exercises, and he would jump into our fighting position, and he would start going into this weird tangent about Vietnam. It was terrifying. Like
Hmm.
the guy freaked me out, all of us.
Yeah.
But he was a badass. I mean, this was the type of environment that he came from, and so I was shaped from those men and took some of that, not all of it, some of it you just don't want to, but with me as I moved up, because they had something, you know, they have grit, they have that resilience,
Hmm.
um, And, my mentor, one of my mentors was retired now, Master Chief Delbert Terrell, who was my very first chief ever in the CBs. And this guy just retired. Like he spent 37 years or 38 years, maybe even 40, pretty close to 40. And he was the first CB Master Chief ever to be a fleet Master Chief.
Wow.
Like it's unheard of. And the things that guy taught me, about it's never about you. He's like, you don't get promoted because of anything that you did. And you don't take care of troops, you lead them. They don't need to be taken care of, they're adults. I'll never forget those things him saying to me. So all that happened in that first tour. And so I wanted to do other things, and this is where I kind of break away from construction. I go into the EOD space, and it's like that was a different world, but it never. The CBs were where like that was the magic, right? Was the CBs. That was the thing that molded who I was, and that taught me. I mean, I'd say I learned probably 20 years worth of stuff in 4 years.
For sure,
in that environment. So yeah, that was my first tour.
How was the, especially considering where you're at today, looking back in terms of the training that you had, in starting with CBs throughout your time with the CBs, like how does that, I don't know, translate or compare to civilian training in construction?
Well, I mean, we from a practical standpoint, we have the same systems, right? We have back then used to be called CBCM, which was the project management software tool that we used. We did the same process from pre-con of estimating takeoffs, similar structures. You had like a job site soup, you had a kind of a construction manager. And I think the way it translated well for me is that you were able to become a leader of a project very early on, and probably prematurely, I would argue, right. Because of necessity, right? So you had opportunities to lead early, and it was a great incubator for failure, right? Like that was something that I loved about my time with the CBs, is that you'd get your ass chewed from time to time, but failing was kind of like you had to do that. That was the only way you're going to learn.
Yeah.
And that helped me from an early age deal with chaos and being able to stay calm within that space. Because construction in the civilian world or in the military, it's all uncertainty, all of it. And so being able to do it in an environment where you got a rifle on your back, full gear, and people are trying to kill you and you're trying to build stuff, that puts things in perspective when they're not trying to kill you and you're trying to build stuff. You got two layers of uncertainty there. So I think the one of the translatable things is the what I like to call the flight attendant syndrome, right? Like as a leader in the military, you can't be freaking out. Like if you're leading a team and you're freaking out, it's like a flight attendant freaking out. Like you don't ever want to see that, man.
That's good. Yeah. I haven't heard that analogy. That's great.
No, I do it all the time. I was like, I am my team's flight attendant.
Yeah. Yeah.
As long as I'm not freaking out, you're not freaking out. Because if I'm freaking out, plane's going down.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and that was I think that taught me really early that I didn't give a shit if I was like losing my mind inside of me. The facade that I put out needed to be cool, calm, and collected because I had people looking up.
Yeah.
Saying, okay, what do we do next? And because I was doing that as a young troop, and I've seen both sides of that coin. And when that dude's freaking out, I'm freaking out. Like we're jumping on that ship, man. I'm freaking out. So that right there is a direct translation. It's like being able to put things in perspective. Like as a veteran, we've seen what a bad day looks like. Those bad days you're not going to have, no one's going to be they're not going to mortar your job site.
Yeah.
So it's like, if you look at it from that space and that lens and say, this isn't a bad day, we're going to get through this.
Mm-hmm.
That's really powerful when you're dealing with civilians who feel like this is a really bad day to them.
Yep. Yep. Very, very well said. I especially appreciate the kind of core mindset that you brought up in terms of failure, where it's essentially the expectation is you're going to fail. The question is, what do you do with that failure, and how do you move forward if you're moving forward, right? So the expectation is either you're rising or you're sinking. There's just not much of it in between.
Yeah, there's not.
Yeah. So that's very well said. I appreciate all that.
There's not at all. And it's very, I learned very quickly that the civilian world is not much different than the civilian construction industry, especially, is not much different than the civilian or the military, either battlefield type environment or those intense operational units. It just speaks a different dialect. That's the only really difference.
Yeah. It's the core principles that you touched on. I totally agree. Yeah. Awesome. So you started touching on, moving on from CBs to EOD. Like, talk to us about what that process looked like for you, and I guess how it really happened, how it occurred.
Yeah, I mean, it was just more of a life decision, right? I wanted to do something like that. I knew I couldn't do other. There's no way I was going to be a SEAL. Like, there's just no way. It seemed pretty translatable from being, what I did as a construction electrician. So that's kind of how that happened, and so without going into the nitty-gritty details, that's where I spent a lot of my rest of my time in, right? And then of course at the end I went back to NAVFAC, Navy Facility Engineering Command, kind of got back to my construction roots. But of course I deployed a shit ton of times in between all of that. And that's where I started really taking on more leadership roles within those units, and where I really started to understand the landscape of a leader, like what that really looks like, and what that doesn't look like, for that matter. I mean, I think early on in my career as what I thought I was a shit hot E5, right? Like, I could win the world. And I had this, he was a senior chief at the time. I had a squad. Like, I was in a E5 position, should have been an E6, but I was doing it, right? So I thought I was special somehow. I had 14 men underneath me, and I had this senior chief sit down in front of me, and he had this piece of paper, and he started reading these terrible things about this person. And it was all things like how this person was showing up to their team. And he said, "What would you do with this person?" And, I was like, "I would light his ass up." He's like, "What if I told you that person was you?" And I was like, "What?" He went around and got like an assessment of how I was showing up for that team. And I had no idea.
Yeah.
And I tell you, man, that was if he didn't do that, I don't know where I'd be, because I thought it was awesome. Nobody was telling me anything.
Yeah.
And that was devastating for me. But that small environment, that unit, that type of camaraderie, that was what they thrived on. And it helped me. That right there was talking about a transferable skill. That was a game changer in the civilian space when I started talking about doing surveys and, creating safe spaces for your team to speak up. And I would have to put it in perspective. I'd be like, listen, if creating a safe space is the same thing that a special operations unit needs, then it's going to be manly enough for a construction site. Because you're up against that. There's that machismo deal, and I have a very large female construction management group team. They're phenomenal. Like they are phenomenal project managers. Of course, I worry always to make sure, I want to make sure that that people see them for what they are, that they are, construction managers. I don't care about what sex
Mm-hmm.
they are, male or female, doesn't matter. But that space of when you start talking about safe, right? When you say things safe, they think touchy feely hugs and rainbows
Totally.
that's not the case, right? As you know, any operating unit, any team, they need to be able to speak freely and feel safe to
Mm-hmm.
do it. And so that environment taught me that. Of course, I also learned, the training was pretty terrible. And I learned that they look for people, they want people to be the best, that they'll do whatever it takes to get the mission done. Sometimes that's cheating, that's lying. I mean, it's a different environment, right? It's a different
Mm-hmm.
landscape. So you got to take some of the good with the bad there.
Yeah.
But all in all, that experience really drilled down into the leadership space for me, to
Mm-hmm.
where I recognized that I was not a very good leader, and B, I needed help.
Mm-hmm.
And so it taught me to start looking at mentors instead of just a check in the box. I needed real mentors that would tell me that I was fucked up,
Mm-hmm.
that wouldn't lie to me, that would look at me and go, "You suck, dude. And this is why you suck." And that was it's an invaluable transferable skill. If the veterans that we have now can understand that real talk is a missing element in our industry. People say a lot of things that they just want to say, and that doesn't help anybody. So, yeah, I mean, that's kind of, in a nutshell, that's kind of my journey into, to 2019, when now here I am 3 months away from retiring, scared shitless.
Can we kind of break out to the extent that you want, even if it's like a high level by buckets of whether it's buckets of deployment, buckets of years, buckets of
Oh, yeah.
rank, to kind of just break it out into milestones, I'll call it.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of the training, I mean, I guess going into the next phase from CBs, that was a big milestone. And then
Mm-hmm.
I think picking up when I was Sailor of the Year, Sea Sailor of the Year, and that was a pretty remarkable journey, because I hated my boss
Mm.
that helped me get to that. And that was a unique thing. My wife always talks about it all the time, where this guy was the nightmare of a human being. Like he pushed me to limits that I didn't know why he was doing this.
Mm.
And he saw something in me that I damn sure didn't see.
Mm-hmm.
And he kept making me perform at a level that he felt like I could. And it ended up getting me in front of our admiral and being awarded the Sea Sailor of the Year for the
Mm.
entire Navy. Um, and
That's amazing.
yeah, and I remember that specific chief coming up to me and saying, "Do you still hate me?" And I don't. I adore him now, but I didn't know what he was doing, right? I
Yeah.
didn't understand. Felt like you could have been a little gentler with the way he was doing it, but
Yeah.
so that was a big one. Then picking up chief and going through that experience through what they call initiation from E67, that was a huge milestone for
Mm.
me, because that's just in the Navy, that is like, chiefs have the biggest, as far as senior enlisted,
Mm-hmm.
biggest um, authority in
Sure.
that space. So they get given a lot of stuff, which becomes pretty scary, because you learn in that transition period that now you're the chief. Like, so what you
Mm-hmm.
say is going to be treated as gospel.
Mm-hmm.
So you better not be wrong. And that freaked me out, because I didn't know a lot of stuff,
Yeah.
but the idea was, it that milestone of picking up chief, but what that milestone did for me is it taught me that networking was something that I needed to learn how to do, how to rely on a team, a community. And because up until that point, I thought being independent was the pinnacle of dependencies. And I learned through that transition that it was interdependency, which was the magic. It was like, hey, I may not know it, but one of my brothers or sisters definitely does. And so, I wouldn't tell my troop this, but I'd be like, hey, give me a second. I'm going to go get some coffee. And I'd just go around the corner and, like find my chief buddy. Hey, do you know that? And they'd give me the answer and I'd come back and tell them. And then my troop would think I know everything.
Right.
No,
well, that's the way to do it. That's the way to do it. You find the specialties and pass it, coordinate it, consolidate it, pass it on.
That's right. Yeah.
So what I'd like to kind of expand on is two things. One is if there's any kind of, just true like highlight moments in each of these, bucket interval periods. You kind of touched on a few there. And then the second is I'll say lessons learned, and or if there are significant moments that you think were a critical, I don't know, reason or accomplishment toward achieving, more leadership roles. So what I'm trying to get at here is creating this kind of timeline of this is how you continue to rise in rank because of your accomplishments. So deservedly so, you achieved what you did.
Yeah. So, I would say probably, we'll start with like 2005-ish in the Al-Anbar province, the kind of like 2005, 2009, that time frame was spent a lot of time in that AO or that Operation Iraqi Freedom space, and then a little bit of the Horn of Africa stuff. I was meritorious promoted to E6, and that was definitely not anything I did. I had a very incredible team. I was by my ops department, ops chief, ops group. I was empowered to lead teams outside the wire on various missions. And I had a lot of young folks with me, which I've learned now. What I learned at that moment, I didn't know. I was scared to death, right? Because these are all like pretty new people. I mean, they've been trained, they have training, but you're bringing them into a combat zone, and you think that you definitely need all these seasoned men and women to lead this fight. And what I learned there is that you don't, right? Like if you can lead them with clarity, purpose, and a decentralized chain of command style where you're empowering them to make decisions at their level and I always kind of told them, I said, hey, if you make a decision and you did it with the best possible information available and with good intentions, then I'll die on that hill for you. I'll support you. That was not something that I learned from reading. That was something I learned from failing, because I was trying to, up until that point, I was really trying to micromanage all these decisions. And what it did is it put me down in the process. And as a leader, you can't do that, right? You can't be in the process. You have to be above it so you can protect your team while they're in the process. And I had a young man, hadn't been in the Navy very long. He humbled me and he said, you have to trust us. If not, you're going to get us killed. And at first I just wanted to punch him in his face, right? Said, what do you know? But I took a breath, I kind of walked around the little camp there and went back. He was right. It's like, we can't win if I can't trust them. So the problem was with me as the leader. I was performing at a pay grade a couple below me because I wouldn't trust my team. And when I started doing that, and empowering them to make decisions, it was a game changer. I mean, that was like kind of the big one right there. That changed me again as a leader. I think from there, moving on to like the Horn of Africa was another one. That was when I started seeing like the Joint Special Operations Group, you know, the Delta CAG guys, the way they operate. That's a whole different world. Like those dudes are truly Marvel superheroes. They believe in, they always have very clear assignments, roles, responsibilities. The clarity of their mission is always well articulated across the group. They taught me that you have to be consistently training for something to build instincts and not emotions, because emotions is that thing that gets you, that's what makes you hesitate. And so what was funny was I just recently, we are doing this thing in our project where I have a very, I don't say young, I have a lot of young construction managers, but I have some really seasoned superintendents. But none of them have ever actually ran a TAC plan. I don't know if you're familiar with a TAC plan, right? But I want to do this because we have a lot of redundancy in these rooms that we're building, the patient rooms. And I did a rock drill, like a tabletop exercise of walking each trade through, kind of like in these, they call them wagons, TAC wagons, of like, hey, you go in. And that experience, like that drill, which was very well received and they loved it, was created by those groups in the CAG. I mean, that's what they did. They would build models to what you're going to go do, and they would walk you through that. I mean, you'd be like, you're supposed to be here, you're there, and you'd do that 1,000 times to where it was like you were dreaming about it, you know? And it was really cool because, you know, one is that the entire construction team, they think you're a wizard, you know? And I'm like, well, I was like, this is not something I created, guys. Like, this is some dudes that like would kill you in your sleep, you know, like sneak in your house and then go eat a bologna sandwich afterwards and never think twice about it. I said, but it's very relatable to what we're going through, because we're needing to treat these things on instinct. Like, people have to know clarity of where you're supposed to be, when you're supposed to be there, and how long are you allowed to be in that space. So that was kind of the other one. And then there was some shore duty in there. You know, I think really some of the shore duty stuff was more, that was more of like, you just have to do that in the Navy. I had a chance to be a drill instructor. That was kind of fun. I learned from that. I just learned how to be very good with keeping my shit together and like not losing it too much.
Yeah.
Especially in a space where you're the person that's supposed to lose their shit.
Yeah.
You know. But yeah, and then fast forward to kind of the last 3 years of service, which is where I had this senior officer that really set me up, and I didn't know it then, set me up for civilian life. This was a brilliant man that had a lot of education. And he started talking about asking me questions like, what do you want to do when you get out? And I'm like, I don't know. I remember my first answer was hand out basketballs at the YMCA. I thought that's what I want to do. It'd be easy, no stress. And he told me, he said, Kevin, I don't think your personality is going to do well with a no stress environment. And I said, well, what makes you think that? He's like, because you are intense, man. He's like, I think the construction thing is a good route for you. And I was like, why? He's like, because it's crazy. He's like, it's nuts. It's like this. It's like a war zone. It's, you know, without the bullets. And I remember looking at him going, I don't know if I continuously need that in my life. And but he was my God, he was so right
Mm.
um, with that comment. So
Yeah.
he really mentored me towards the end and helped he helped me make that decision, but he didn't nothing helped me not freak out because I
Right.
really did.
Yeah. Yeah.
That first year after retirement, I was a mess.
Yeah. So let's touch on so before we close out service, which I appreciate you kind of bringing to light those examples. That was exactly what I was kind of hoping to hear from you. Anything else you wanna add, like specific stories that come to mind, anything of that
Uh,
nature?
I know. I mean, one thing I want to point out is like I think any veteran listening to this, what they need to understand is like that you don't have to deployed in a combat any of that stuff, combat
Hmm.
zone or like I don't I don't want anyone to think that is a necessity to make you valuable to the civilian world
Hmm.
and especially into the construction space because I have veterans of all different from supply and logistics to military police, you name it.
Hmm.
And they are some of my best performers, my best hires. I mean, right now I have a lieutenant colonel that works for me. And yeah, that's right. He works for an enlisted guy. I had to like, I actually asked him, I said, are you good with that? You know, he's a great dude, but he spent his whole time as Army Corps of Engineers.
Hmm.
And that's one of those guys that mentors up and down the chain of command. I mean, he gives me mentorship. I mean, I lean on him. I was like, hey, what do you think about this?
Hmm.
We do a one-on-one every week, and it's funny. I'll get done. I'm like, hey, I know this is supposed to be a one-on-one for me or for you. I said, but I'm taking this one, yeah.
Yeah.
But so I think I that's one thing I just want to make sure that's
Yeah.
clear to any of the veterans.
Yeah, it's really an important thing to highlight because there certainly is I don't know if stigma is the right word, but I'll just use it as stigma like internally to the veteran community in terms of like a value system as it relates to what you did, where you did it, how you did it. End of the day, as you pointed out, and as we keep touching on these like kind of core foundational translatable skills, you're going to have those regardless to translate at least to a degree that you can leverage and have success with. So yeah, very, very important to highlight that. So kind of going to where I initially had paused you, that was, I guess, a reenlistment cycle came up where you spoke to your wife about it. And that's what kind of really set the tone for retiring.
It did, yeah. You know, she was like, "Well, I think we need to get out, right?"
Mhm.
Like, you know, she'd missed her family. You know, there's a lot of the different dynamics, right?
Yeah.
And I'm gonna do what I'm told when it comes to my wife, and she's the admiral, my family. So that's what I did. So I went through all of that. I did not do some of the things that I encourage every veteran listening to this to do, and that's get your VA benefits upon
Mhm.
discharge. Go
Mhm.
through that. I did not.
Mm.
I didn't even know about that.
Yeah.
Skill bridge, same thing. You know, if you're a year out, start looking at that.
Yep.
But here I am. I'm out now, and I felt extremely unanchored. I mean,
Hmm.
I was a bit I was a mess. I mean, I went from a world where purpose is clear.
Hmm.
You know, your team is definitely your family, and your mission is always bigger than who you are. It's than you, your team, whoever. To a civilian landscape where really I was just trying to figure out where I fit.
Hmm.
I was kind of like an E1 all over again.
Yeah.
Um, I went to a mentor that I had when I was on active duty, and I was like, I don't know what to do. I was like, and I was scared. I mean, I was like, for the first time, I was no longer in charge of anything,
Hmm.
you know, and
Yep.
um, I had to take like a PowerPoint and an Excel class, and you know, because I had people to do that for me, like yeomen
Hmm.
or whatever. Um, I had to figure. I didn't even know what the hell a W-4 was for my taxes. I never heard of that. I
Hmm.
probably filled one out in boot camp like 100 years ago, but it was chaos. I filled a lot of stuff out in boot camp,
Yeah.
and so I was trying to find my footing, and this mentor, he said, well, hey, one of the things that you learned as a chief is that you never can forget where you came from. He's like, so how do you get back to that? And I was like, I have no idea. And there was this job that I ran across. It was like an entry level job placing precast concrete beds for this company called Finfrock. It was like they built like parking garages and resorts in Orlando. This precast bed system. It's really high tech, but here I am. I get out and I go work for these guys, and I'm a laborer, and I'm surrounded by some folks that are getting a second chance at life. A lot of them were felons. I mean, I think my team there, a lot of the guys had like ankle monitors. Like it was really interesting, right?
Yeah.
But these people were hard. I mean, they were the most hardest working people I've ever seen in my life.
Mm.
And here I am in the middle of this, and I'd get home and I'd be gross, man. I mean, I would just be covered in soot and concrete and dirt and grime. And I remember my wife like starting to feel sorry for me that I'm doing this. But I felt absolutely like it was amazing. It was like it was re-energizing. That manual labor. I was not making much, but that manual labor really grounded me to be like, hey, this is what it's about, right? This is about, that's the grit, the hard level, or the hard work, the effort, the gratification of getting something done, truly working your butt off to make it happen. And it humbled me. And it put me back in the same mindset when I first came up in the military of being humble and hungry, right? It was just something about it. And so my wife finally said, you have to like get a real job. Like, what are you doing? And I was like, well, this is a real job. She's like, yeah, but this is, I appreciate what you're doing. I think it's amazing. And not to discredit that job by any means. It was just, I had spent a lot of years to get into something and work my way up, right? This was clearly not that position, very family driven business, great business. But I didn't know anything about precast construction, like doing the work actually. I mean, I was learning, I learned it. And so I took a job with a consultant group that did a lot of like DoD construction projects, still had a clearance, had some underwater construction stuff. And then they said, hey, we want to bring you on full time because Florida was blowing up. And I was basically monitoring all these projects on a financial level. So I learned about the pay apps, stuff I didn't know. We don't do that in the military. And again, I didn't have anybody to lead. It was just me. And for the veterans, like, and I'm sure a lot of people can relate to this. It's like leading people is, for me, gives me purpose. So I struggled with that. And what I was doing was not healthy because I was creating chaos in my life because I didn't have enough of it in my professional life. And I was so used to that chaos. I didn't have a camaraderie. I didn't have a support system. And, that I missed those marks. I should have really surrounded myself around veterans as mentors, the VA, the mental health. It took me kind of going through some really scary moments in my family to like hitting rock bottom to where I had to go finally talk to mental health and have a real conversation with them and not just lie to them just to get them out of my face, and to start healing and understanding why I believed the things that I believed, why I felt the way I felt. And then that actually what I knew could bring true value to the space that I was trying to work in construction. So that was a huge checkpoint in my life, was mental health. Mental health, and for me, it was faith. I was not a religious person, didn't really even believe in God, to be honest with you. And I was missing that. I needed that in my life personally. So that helped me significantly. And what it did is it started making me reach out to some folks. And I had somebody go to my wife actually and say, "Hey, we're looking for a project manager in North Carolina to work for Merck Pharmaceuticals on a big $1 billion project there." And I called this guy that we knew from the Middle East because my wife and I lived in the Middle East for years when I was active duty. And I said, "I don't know shit about pharmaceutical construction, man." He's like, "That's okay." He's like, "I just need somebody that can endure, that has the grit and the resilience to lead a team through this madness." And I was like, "Well, okay, I'll give it a whirl, man."
Yeah.
And
I want to pause you there, and then we'll jump back to getting started with the pharmaceutical job. When you were retiring, why do you think you didn't go through any of the motions that you mentioned, right? Whether it be benefits, whether it be skill bridge, whether it be you name it.
well, that's a great point because, and this is something for all the leaders that are retiring that have like large groups, is you got to take care of yourself. Like we do a really bad job at doing that as military leaders. We put our teams always first, which is great, but your family is also part of your team. And I didn't do it because I was still in that mindset, and I failed my family because of that. I lost money because of that. So I was still working until the day that I left.
Yeah.
And I did not, other than the transition assistance stuff that you have to do, which taught you how to write like a resume and like do like an interview, and wasn't really. And that's one of the, going back to the beginning, talking about how they can help with transition, is they need to bring in more civilian employers to those things.
Yeah. Yep.
It needs to stop being all government contractors, government agencies. Like for me, I wanted nothing to do with the U.S. government when I retired. I had done my time. I got the T-shirt. I now want to go see if I can be a big boy and work without the U.S. government paying my salary. But so I did not take a minute to make my family the most important thing, and they should have been, because I had spent so many years not doing that. So thank you. That's a good point.
Yeah. So I mean, what ends up happening a lot with vets is getting stuck in the mindset, not being able to really transition that mindset, right? Which is kind of what you were describing there. You then mentioned at some point you went to a mentor, which does actually, reflect you realizing you were stuck in a mindset, at least to some degree. So like, how did that end up being, a scenario that you realized you needed?
Well, I mean, it was somebody who I talked to often, but I'd never really reached out and said, "Hey, I'm in trouble. Like I need help." And my wife kind of gave me an ultimatum. She's like, "You need to get out of whatever this is."
Yeah.
Because it's bringing the whole family dynamic down. So I knew that like I needed to make some very distinct changes in my life. And that was, I leaned on the one person that I knew that had their shit together and that's been through struggles as well. But that's what kind of led me to that, to really lean on them to get that insight, because I learned pretty quickly after retirement that everything that I thought I could do but like alone was stupid. Like that was a dumb thing to think. There's nothing I can do by nothing I can do by myself. Nothing at all. You need a system, or you need a community, you need a support group, a system, whether your family, mentors, friends, you name it, whatever it is, you've got to be surrounded by people who are your cheerleaders. And you got to have some real conversations about when you suck, or that when you're just, you're I don't say being an asshole, but you're being an asshole, and you're being stubborn, and you're trying to suffer through it, when in reality you just throw an olive branch out there, man. Like people will help you.
Yeah, well put. And then what was the kind of like carrying on with that point on when you mentioned, looking to seeking that mental health perspective, support? How did that end up happening? And walk us through that a little bit.
Oh man, yeah, that one's so I was not like all the things that I used as coping mechanisms in the military, which were normalized. I won't get into it. It wasn't like substance abuse, it was other things, but
Yeah.
Were things that were not normal, right? Like that would make me it makes me a weirdo in the civilian world.
Yeah.
But in the military world, there's some normalcy to it because you're surrounded by these same people. And what it did is I never believed that I had PTSD, right? I don't have nightmares. I don't like crowds. I don't sleep super well. I'm pretty hypervigilant, and I'm saying this to a mental health counselor, and they're like, dude, you have PTSD. Like, I'm like, really? Like, and so my belief system was broken because when I was finally honest with my wife, which I was not, my wife's jaw, I mean, she was ready to pack her shit and leave. So I was like, I can't, like, that's the one thing I can't lose is my family. So what do I need to do? Well, I needed to really I went to mental health and I said, I'm at my worst right now. I don't know what will happen next.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's kind of where I was at. And I will tell you, the VA gets a lot of beat downs from folks, but my personal experience has been really great with their mental health.
Mm.
They've been phenomenal with me. I mean, I've had some great psychiatrists and psychologists that I've worked with that have really been the people I needed, man. Like, they were just like, hey, stop being an asshole, or they'd straight up tell you, like, dude, you're stupid, right? Like what you're doing is really dumb. And that's how I respond to that. Like that helps
Yeah.
me. So they've been really good. And so I don't want anyone to buy into someone else's opinion on that
Right.
system until they go out and try it.
Right.
Because it's helped me significantly. I didn't know I had some of the problems that I had.
Yeah.
I didn't know that it was what I believed made me better or made me feel better was actually something that was killing my family.
Yeah.
So that was like really the turning point, that a switch kind of flicked. And it wasn't overnight. It took a lot of time, a lot of counseling with me and my wife for her to understand, because I never talked about anything.
Right.
For me to be very open and honest about that was not easy. Like being honest with your family is a lot different than being honest with your team. It's really hard because those are your people, right? Forever people. And so that got me on a different path, right? I said, I can do this now. I have the strength. I have now the tools that I need to be a civilian. And I was missing those things.
Yeah.
So yeah, does that kind of answer the
Absolutely.
question?
Yeah. Very, very well said. Like the thing that resonated with me, which brought me to ask that question was when you had originally, mentioned that you just don't need to suffer through it, right? Like put an olive branch out there. People want to help. And I think it's a really powerful statement. Obviously it's also easier said than done. Many times it actually feels, and it even might just be easier to just suffer through it on your own, but it's just not the way forward. So to kind of close out, I know you've mentioned a handful as we've been talking here in terms of, kind of hindsight, what wasn't working, what was working as it relates to transitioning military to civilian life, just as like a, pointers now that you do have this hindsight knowledge, anything you provide to the audience in terms of like, just check these things off the list.
Yeah. One, start with make sure you get your benefits on discharge. Like, get that stuff set up. Start looking at, and there's a lot of different veteran groups out there that can help you to write resumes that are catered to all these different things that you're interested in doing. You should not just have one resume for one thing. And get them out there early. Have those conversations. Really, really dig into that skill bridge. Try to find something, because what they don't realize, or maybe they do, but what I didn't, is that I brought grit, discipline, empathy, and purpose to an industry that thrives on all of that stuff. And I had it ingrained in me from my military service. So, if you're a veteran listening to this, you have not lost your mission going into civilian service. You already have some intangible skills that aren't trainable necessarily, that take a long time to get, that you're going to bring to a table that desperately needs it. Now, what I would like to tell everybody is that unless you're an officer, like a senior officer or something, you're likely a really shitty manager. And I had to learn that the hard way. I had a young 28-year-old project manager that we were at a project and I started talking and he looked at me and he's like, I respect whatever it is you did, but you don't know what the fuck you're talking about. I wanted to kill him when he said that. But I got home, I told my wife, and my wife looked at me and she's like, well, was he right? I was like, yeah, he was. We are not necessarily, as listed folks, we're not really taught how to manage things. We're taught how to lead people. And so be very cognizant of that fact. Don't go in with a mindset that you think that you're God's gift to leadership or management. Because you may be a great leader, but you're probably not a very good manager. Or you may be a good manager, but you may not be a good leader. And that's okay. Be humble about that perspective. Do not just assume that you're great at that stuff. Because that's going to really set you back in that space. You need to sit back and watch and see where you fit in. That would probably be my biggest things.
Yeah. Awesome. Well said. So before we move into where I put a pause in your story, which was the pharmaceutical project management, I want to first hear what a day, a week, whatever, time frame makes sense, looks like in a life of underwater construction. Because we rolled over that, and I mean it's pretty fascinating. Like I don't know anyone who's doing that.
It's more of so for those guys, they make a ton of money. The actual people doing the construction, very limited amount of time that you do it underwater. You're doing like an hour and a half, 2 hours, or whatever it is down there, depending on the depths of it. But
that makes sense.
It's normally about 4 hours of prep, with all your tanks, all your standbys, all your safety protocols, and then 4 hours of diving. So it's a very slow process. The men and women who do that job are the toughest human beings I've ever been around. And there's not very many of them. I mean, their lifespans are not great. But yeah, they make a bunch of money. A lot of offshore stuff, underwater distribution cables, a lot of underwater welding, which was interesting. That is the most craziest thing ever. You're welding in a bubble that you have to stay in, and if you don't, you just die. It's just like I mean, I'm like, I'll pass.
Yeah, really wild.
So yeah, that's those, and a lot of them come from the CB space, underwater construction teams, that kind of stuff, and the other ones just come from some really rough backgrounds, that just aren't scared of shit. I mean, they're missing a gene that makes they should be scared of it. They're just not. Very impressive group of people. A lot of them come from the Northeast or the Northwest in the Washington State area, Oregon area. But it was an incredible experience. I mean, it was the projects that you do. A lot of them, you don't even know what the end results are because they're compartmentalized in a way that you're given small scopes at a time. And so you don't really know what the end, because you can't know, right? It's a need to know thing. So it was a cool experience to do some of those projects. But yeah, that was kind of day in a life. 4 hours, 4 hours setting up, 4 hours working.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, that's just the whole concept is wild. And like you put it, I mean, you got to really not fear the potential highly likely outcome in doing that job. So
very safety minded folks. I mean, safety is the most important aspect of that stuff.
Sure. Yeah. Awesome. So moving back into where we paused, which is starting that project management role in pharmaceutical industry. Walk us through what getting started there was like, and how that went for you.
So that was it was an awesome transition, because I went into a space where every room I went into, I was likely the dumbest person in that room. Like, these are the smartest human beings on the planet. I mean, they eat, breathe, and shit science.
Mm-hmm.
They understand process. I mean, they're brilliant human beings. And I mean, I dealt with some imposter syndrome shit there because I'm like,
Sure.
what am I doing here? Like, these are the smartest people ever. And going back to that grit, discipline and that empathy and that leadership, right? I would go into these rooms, and by being able to embrace the fact that I was the dumbest person in that room, I could be humble enough to see where where I can help,
Yeah.
and that a lot of it was about cross-pollinating, cross communicating, um, getting through tough conversations, because those people don't like having they don't like confrontation.
Mm-hmm.
So being that escalation for them, saying, hey, I'll be your mouthpiece,
Mm-hmm.
or hey, let me take that. Some of the mundane stuff of just organizing a team or grouping teams in the right spaces, and that kind of elevated me into I guess you'd say like a senior PM
Mm-hmm.
role, being able to do that. It was I've never seen $1 billion project before. I was like, holy shit, and you had all this process stuff from overseas. I mean, these things coming from Germany. So you had people who spoke German, you had people who spoke
Mm-hmm.
Italian, and you had all these systems that I'd never even heard of. And I just was like a sponge, really just trying to absorb it all and doing what I could do to support them. But what I found out is that this industry lacks leadership. Like, everybody knows how to do it. They just don't know necessarily how to do it without completely wrecking somebody's mental health or quality of life or burnout.
Mm-hmm.
And because they don't necessarily have a leader that can navigate that space for them, it can be top cover, if you will. One of the things that I learned in that first pharmaceutical project was, it's amazing to know that these brilliant minds would spend a lot of their time using that creativity and that brilliance on trying to find resources.
Yeah.
And I'm like, guys, no, I'm your leader. Let me find your resources.
Mm-hmm.
You use your creativity to like build shit and do your
Yeah.
magic. And that took trust, right? You had to do a lot of repetition. I mean, just saying, hey, I'm going to be here at this time. Well, if I'm there at that time every day, that's that start of that trust.
Mm-hmm.
And from the military, that's what it's all about, right? Like,
Yeah.
is know the way, show the way, go the way. I forget who said that, but it wasn't me that created that. Somebody else did. But that was really what they were missing, is they needed a leader to emulate the talk, right? To
Mm-hmm.
actually walk it. And that was a pretty easy space for me and for most veterans. Like, oh shit, I can do it. I know where I'm supposed to be.
Mm-hmm.
I can get there on time. I can be
Yeah.
in the right uniform, if you will. And there's nothing they can do that can hurt me, because no one's trying to kill me.
Yeah.
So I can do this. And so they started following that, right? So it started kind of changing the dynamic of how we worked, how we communicated. Um, the military, especially small units, we live and die on commitments to one another. Like, if I commit
Mm-hmm.
to you that I'm going to do something,
Yep.
right, I'm going to be held accountable if I don't,
Mm-hmm.
because it's a respect and trust thing. And that's a language that they're learning now. That's more prevalent now. But when I first got into this back in 2019, saying things like, well, I commit to you to having this done by this time, was not really a thing. And if you did
Mm-hmm.
say it, it was misunderstood as it was a commitment to the GC or to the owner. It's like, no, it's a commitment to each other, to you
Mm-hmm.
and that person. And so, but we do that already. We already have that mindset. So we just have to use it and know that they don't understand it,
Yep.
and help them through that. So that was that first project, but I was on the owner side for that job.
Mm-hmm.
And so DPR was my GC, and huge firm, as most people know. And I felt like they were constantly bullshitting me because I just didn't know enough about the GC side to like call out their bullshit.
Mm.
And so I was like, I got to go to a GC. I've got to go get to that space. And so I had a mentor that I've seeked out on that project, who's civilian, who, when he first came into the construction industry like 40 years ago, his mentor was a retired chief in the Navy, ironically enough.
Mm.
So now here it is, 40 more years later, he's my mentor.
Yeah.
And I told him, I said, hey, I want to go to the GC side. What should I do? And his advice was baffling at first. He said, you need to find the toughest failing project that you can find and go do it. And I was like, what? He's like, yeah. He's like, it's win-win, man. He's like, if you can't turn it around, no harm, no foul. I was going to fail anyway.
Yeah.
If you turn it around, you start making your name, because he knew that like I was sweating the fact that I was already behind my peers.
Mm. Yeah.
In that space.
Yeah.
How they're already senior PMs, some PXs, like they're already getting to that. And so I was like, okay. Some networking that I had. There was a project in Greenville, North Carolina, another pharmaceutical. It started off as a Moderna and a Department of Defense project. DOD backed out, and everybody was scrambling.
Sure.
And the GC that was on this job, I won't name, but the GC had created an environment where the owner wasn't even talking to them anymore. They wouldn't even go into the trailer. And the last OAC they had, like a stapler was thrown. Like it was bad.
Yep.
And I was like, well, that sounds exactly that's a good place to be then. So
on point.
Yeah. So I show up, and sure enough, it's complete chaos. There's like 7 or 8 project management staff for a $140 million project. We were way behind, way over budget, or trending way over budget. And we just had an electrical contractor before I got there default, and they were gone. So we got a new electrical contractor on deck. And my first week there, I walk into one of the trailer offices, and I got a electrical superintendent who was wearing a coat, was shivering and sweating, and it was 110 degrees outside. And I'm looking at him, and I'm like, are you going through withdrawals, man? He's like, yeah, I'm an alcoholic. And I was like, holy shit. So I had to get him off site. So now I'm down a person, and I got this giant, like $32 million electrical scope. No room in the budget to bring another person on. And I go to the electrical contractor, and I said, hey, we're way over budget overall. I want to run your entire contract on time and material. And he was like, what? Even he thought that was crazy, even though that was definitely like a dream for him.
Right. Yeah.
And I was like, and I'm going to do it. So here I am. I am now the senior PM for this job and the electrical really superintendent.
Yeah.
And I have to figure out how to get the ownership to talk to me. And I got this young team, and this is where all of my military training, everything that I've ever done, it was met for that moment.
Mm-hmm.
It was like, we've always been tasked in the military to do more with less.
Yeah. And
to create some level of certainty in an uncertain landscape.
Mm-hmm.
How do you do that? It's like, what do we do? It's like, well, we've got to align the team. Mm-hmm. We got to make clear roles, responsibilities, and we need to be transparent. And so with the owner, that was where it started. I went over and they had this crazy ass financial spreadsheet that was just so ambiguous that I could not figure it out. And we had an open book clause in our contract. I'm like, this is not open book. So I went to the owner and I said, here's our Excel file.
Yeah.
Like, I'm giving it to you. Like, this is like truly where we're at. No secrets. That was the first layer of trust. And then I got this electrical, and I told them, I said, I'm going to do this electrical contract on TNM, and they lost their shit, because that's the most scariest thing ever. Mm-hmm. But I had a lot of trust in this electrical contractor, and we ran it on an earned value management system weekly, that we were doing these check-ins. We were doing daily, literally like little daily make ready huddles every single day.
Mm-hmm.
And we worked, I don't know, it was 3.5 months, 7 days a week. And finally I came in on a Sunday and the team was just destroyed. And I said, okay, we have to change something. So it was that, again, the military, it's like we're some of the best change agents in the world, that we just don't realize it, that we can adapt to a changing environment like you wouldn't believe, because that's what it is. That's what the military is, especially in a combat arena where your TTPs, all your tactics are changing, your enemy's evolving, and your team has to be like combat ready, fight ready, or in this case, work ready, and they weren't. So I called the leads in and said, guys, here's what I'm offering. We're gonna weekly work plans. None of that's gonna change. However, if you can get all that work done by Thursday, I'll give you Friday, Saturday, Sunday off, and I'll pay you for Friday and Saturday. I was like, if you get it done by Friday, then I will pay you for Saturday. If you don't get it done, then you're going to work 7 days a week. And honestly, I didn't, to be quite honest with you, I didn't know what was going to happen.
Yeah.
But what I did is because we had that earned value, we had a lot of KPIs that we could measure. I watched our work in place go up and our costs go down. And the morale of the team drastically shifted because they got to see their family again. It was just a whole different deal. And when it was all said and done, we were $686 under budget. And we finished 2 days before schedule.
Amazing.
And I had a team that believed in what I was doing. And I had a team that created their own level of grit that I had never seen in an environment that should have just been an epic failure.
Right.
And, I had an owner that at the end ended up poaching a lot of people from that team on my side to go work with her at Nova Nordis or NNE, because she watched this team, what they could do when they were given the opportunity. And again, going back to military, we are trained to empower our people. And it's based off rank, right? Like you give them authority at a young age to lead. And I took that same principle to the same age group on that team, and I watched magic happen. It wasn't me. These guys were a lot smarter than I was. It was the authority and the trust, the support that I gave them, that gave them the confidence to be them.
Yep.
And now one of those kids at the time he was a PE, became an APM and then a PM, and now he's going to be the youngest director at that pharmaceutical plant that he's working in the history, because he's the guy's trial by fire. So very blessed to have people like that around me, to have trade partners like that. But all of that stuff felt really comfortable for me. That crazy shit. I mean, I always had a smile on my face, because this was like, I was made for this shit. Like this is, you thrive in it. It's almost, there could be a mental health aspect to that. But you thrive on it and your team picks up on it.
Yeah.
So we had fun.
Totally. Yeah, totally. But before I forget, I really wanted to just highlight what you had said prior to that first pharmaceutical role, which was commitment, and the meaning of commitment to veterans, and how kind of impactful and, to an extremity it exists, obviously, and then how that translates into civilian life. And I felt that was very important, an important statement that, I guess I knew in my own head, for my own belief system, but it was the first time I think I really heard someone else kind of like say it out loud in the way you did. So I just thought that was important to highlight. And then second, zooming back to, where you just left off, which was, I see that as, creating, I think we talked about this offline as well, as creating kind of this structure for success where it didn't exist otherwise, right? These guys were just on a site that was failing and they didn't have up or down or left and right. And when you created that for them, they started seeing some wins, and then those wins just carried into kind of adrenaline, success, commitment, all of those fundamentals. That's an awesome story to see that unfold.
It was a lot of fun. I have the utmost respect for that entire team of what they were able to accomplish in an environment that was made to fail.
Mm-hmm.
Like that group should have never been doing a job that size.
Yeah.
And that company should have never taken that job. Ever.
Mm-hmm.
But they did it, and it was incredible to watch. And again, it's like it's kind of like in a really tough combat environment. Those men and women that you're with are the ones you're closest to forever, because you went through all that together.
Yep.
Very similar in that space. And one of the cool things that I think a veteran, a lot of them don't know this, but they have a hidden superpower that most people don't think about, and that's operational leadership.
Mm-hmm.
Like, they're made with that. Like, imagine in the construction industry, your main job is to direct teams in an uncertain environment. That is really that's like kind of the high level job description for my level or PMs. That you have your own. It's just different volume of uncertainty. And most veterans already have operated in unstable and uncertain environments their entire career. From different presidencies, different different bosses every 3 years. Or maybe even less than that, depending on what type of tour it is. And I would argue that veterans are probably one of the few groups that can thrive in that type of space, to where they actually crave it. Now, sometimes that also, you have to be very careful with that, because some of that uncertainty can be nuts. Like, when you think you can make it certain, you cannot. You try to get it as certain as you can. But yeah, it's and it all starts with leadership. Something that just these universities and these trade schools, union, they don't teach leadership.
Right.
Right. They just don't.
What I keep seeing as like a threat, or at least how I'm interpreting it in kind of the examples you've been providing, going back to that kind of core concept that you had mentioned, which was like pull yourself out of the process, right? As it relates to, being a leader. How did you kind of recognize the necessity or the opportunity to do so in like this example right now, right? You're on a site as a senior PM, for example. Like, how do you recognize, okay, I actually have to pull out of the nitty gritty to push the team forward for the overarching good?
Well, I will be honest. In the beginning of this job, I had to get down into the process, and it was terrible because we got this job kind of like suddenly, and then we didn't have a team. So, when I showed up, there was like 3 people. And so we all had to work as project engineers, APMs, PMs, whatever. And then as we built the team, I knew just from my experience in the military that I had to get out of the process, because what was happening is that I couldn't protect the team from the other, external things that were going to hit them if I wasn't out of it, looking ahead,
right,
to kind of provide that top cover, especially as the executive. You need your senior PM to be in it, right? To be leading directly those PMs. And and actually I got great feedback from a senior PM that she's up north now, but it was phenomenal when she told me. She said, "Kevin, you got to get out of the weeds because you're constraining the team." And that was a me problem, right? Like I was like, "You're 100% right." I was thinking it, but I didn't want to say it out loud, right? But and her telling me was incredible, because I was already knew that. Like, I knew I had to get out of it. I had to build more trust with this team. and allow them the autonomy to fail or to succeed.
Mm-hmm.
And that was a great moment for me, because I knew I had trust with that person to be able to feel safe enough to tell me that. And I started to watch that team start growing, and I started being able to protect their six, because when I'm in the process, I cannot provide escalation support for them or run interference if need be. So it allowed me to focus, or I say me, it allows all of us, when we get out of the process and lead, when we're in those positions, we help bring clarity to chaos by doing that. Because for them, they see nothing but chaos.
Right.
So they need clarity. They need stop checkpoints to say, hey, remember why you're doing what you're doing.
Mm-hmm. And
when you're in the weeds, you're just as messed up as they are. You need someone to come and tell you that.
Right.
So
Totally.
that's kind of like how that came about.
Yeah, makes sense. And so does that bring you to bring us like to where we're at today?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So now I have a team of about, if you count self-performer, about 30 people.
Mm-hmm.
And, like I said, my project management staff, their age, if I combine all their ages up with all the years of experience my superintendents have more years of experience than they do of being on this earth. And that was bred out of it's in Wichita Falls, not a lot of talent and it's not Wichita Falls' fault. It's just they've created a system where everybody goes to school and leaves.
Yeah.
And so we've tried to really be cognizant of trying to hire local, but it's been very difficult. So we've had to really provide a space for these young people where you get accountability and alignment by creating the right climate for them to thrive in.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where, we had to really be aware of how we led. We had to lead with a significant amount of empathy and understanding. We had to embrace failure, and we had to teach them about you'll hear them all say this, I have a system, because everybody thinks everything's a priority when you're that young, when you're that age. Everybody, like if I stop a PE in the hallway and say, I need you to do something, that PE could have the most important task on their plate that they'll just drop it and they'll go do whatever I ask them to do. And we had to unlearn that with them.
Yeah.
And so I do crystal balls, rubber balls. I say, hey man, tasking that if you drop, it shatters into a million pieces. That's your priority. That's your crystal ball. Rubber balls, if you drop them, they just bounce right back up and you go get them done. So if what I'm asking you is not a crystal ball, then do your crystal balls. But be honest with me. Tell me when you can get it done. Yeah. Or if you can get it done.
Yeah.
That has helped a lot, because I've had to make focus on actual practical practice of doing that, like watching them see me not get freaked out, or not freak out when they say no to me,
right?
Or have them hold me accountable. Like I had a young woman, and I'm so proud of her for this. She came to me. I kicked her out of this room that she reserved, and she did everything right. She had a trade partner in there, and I had a client meeting that my superintendent needed some visual in there. I didn't know that. So out of reaction, I just kicked them out of that space. And well, I didn't think nothing of it.
Yeah.
And I get done, and she felt safe enough to pull me aside into another room. And she said, hey, that really offended me. That embarrassed me doing that. And I had a couple options. I could have said, tough shit, I'm the boss. But instead, I just said, you know what? Thank you. And I'm sorry. I won't do that again. I was like, I appreciate this, because if you didn't say that to me, I would have done it again. I said, but I know it means a lot to you. And I completely disregarded her feelings. And that gave me a barometer check of my team. That's where we're at right now.
Yeah.
Like if they could do that to me, then I feel very good about this team's health overall, because you
Definitely.
got to have that.
Definitely.
And military taught me that. I mean, the
Yeah.
military, we had to have a real talk.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's it's a great story and a great example of where a team can get to in terms of transparency and trust in one another. So that's awesome. I think that probably, it sounds like, right, that brings us to like today where you're at working on this project now.
Mm-hmm.
Out of curiosity, because you started in like in the PM, once you went in that trajectory, you started in pharmaceutical. Did that kind of create this dynamic of life sciences for you that you're focused in now, or just it happened to?
Well, it did. I mean, that's when in this hospital is the furthest thing from life sciences, because this is behavioral health. So it's not a traditional hospital.
I see. Okay.
This is
Yeah.
a mental health, which is ironic. Mental health is really important to me. So there's
Yeah.
a lot of value. I left my last firm. I would have never left that firm probably if it wasn't for this opportunity. I was not really looking for another job, and a recruiter called me from London, of all places, and he said, "Hey, I know you've been trying to get back to Texas. I got this role for a mental health hospital in Texas, but it's in a really shitty town." And I was like, "What's the town?" He said,
Right.
"Wichita Falls." I'm like, "Yeah." I was like, "Well, that's my town."
Yeah.
And he was like, "Oh, sorry, I didn't mean." And I was like, "No, it's okay." So that's what got me there. And
Yeah.
then, meeting some of the leaders at McGough really solidified that decision, because it's an incredible company to work for. Very family feeling. It feels small, but it's, $3.5 billion a year firm. People have been there forever, and it's a family driven deal. I mean, it's
That
Tom
says something.
McGough. Yeah, Tom McGough still leading it. His brother-in-law is the COO. I mean, it just keeps going down, family. So that got me here. And then, I have learned so much with this team. I mean, I've never walked into a space where where I've never worked with any of them, and none of them have ever worked together. That was insane.
Yeah.
I thought I'd seen it all until that. And then, and then now here we are. We're doing this $500 million hospital.
Very much full circle moment. You getting back home, you doing something in mental health related. That's just an awesome story. So as we're closing out your professional side, civilian professional side, I want to give you a plug to kind of highlight executive overview, however you want to consider it, translatable skills, military to built environment.
Yeah. So, the big one is in this construction space is veterans, like, don't underestimate your value. Like, absolutely do not. Like, employers value mindset. They value work ethic, and they value behaviors, the team dynamic, the communication, the things that we bring to the table. Absolutely incredible. The technical side of it, you can learn. Like, you've proven the ability to learn that. And that leadership that you bring is so much better than the technical fluency that you think you need.
Yeah.
I think that's kind of where the start is, and then the adaptability that you bring. Your adaptability as a veteran is your competitive edge. Like, you are not going to freak out with change. A lot of civilians, they do. They struggle with change. They struggle with new methods, and we live in a space where that happens constantly.
Yeah.
Constantly. The other one is, like, be very curious. It's okay to ask questions. Like, use that skill to be effective, because some of the best veteran hires I have are really good because they ask a lot of questions, and they lead it with very good, and I say very good tact. I mean, they say things like, "Well, help me understand." Like, they get it. They get that they don't know this stuff, but you bring instant street cred, if you will, by being a veteran, because this industry really values veterans. And so don't don't ever think that like your service is any kind of like disability to you being effective. They really value that, and they will work really, um, really hard to help you succeed. And then your mission mindset, every project is a mission. It's the same thing.
Yep.
You already have that rigidity that you need, that you're used to, same uniform, same shoes, same blousing straps, same time, same place. That is another superpower. That the redundancy that can make some people crazy, and that's your space, man.
Mhm.
That is your space, and it's like every single project is a tour, and if you look at it that way, it's a very translatable skill because you see it in that space.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. Well said. Man, what an awesome story. And from my perspective, you're only getting started here in the civilian professional space. That really so many takeaways, things that I even you brought to light for me, and just applying it to myself. That commitment has been one of them. How we translate what commitment means. I thought that was really impactful to hear. So closing out, we're gonna finish off with our two final questions. We'll start with any book or books you'd like to recommend to the audience.
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, the first thing that comes to my mind is Simon Sinek's book, Start With Why. You get an opportunity to learn about the golden triangle. I think it's really important that veterans understand that all these firms know why, or they know what and how. They got all that down, but when you go into a team, that team doesn't know why most of the time. And sometimes as a veteran, you have to lead that team to a why, create a why within that team. And Simon Sinek does a really great job of narrating that and being able to articulate how to do that to help give you some tools. The other one is pretty cliche, but I think it's very relevant. It's Extreme Ownership.
Yeah.
Construction is really catered to that world. When I talk about coming out of the process, that's something that Jocko brings up many, many times. And the other thing too is that book gives you the permission to not ask permission to be a leader. Like your leadership doesn't rely on titles. It relies on actions. I mean, we're 80 to 90% of how we learn is visual. And that means that your teams want to see you like making actions, not words. And so no matter what your position is in that construction team, like you don't need anybody's permission to be a leader for them at all. And I think that book really helps put that in perspective. And then I think my last one again would have to be Simon Sinek, was that leaders eat last. I think it's really good for us to remember that the way we treat our teams is a direct reflection of who we are and what kind of teams we're trying to make. I always made a joke, and I spoke to all of the executive leadership team in Minnesota recently about toxic leadership. And I would always tell my commanding officer in my last tour, I said, I guarantee you, if there's a fat chief, there's going to be fat troops. And he'd be like, no, there's no. I was like, I guarantee you, there's PT problem. Every single time there was. Like, we literally have to be the one they're looking up to be. Like they want to, they need to see you as a veteran, as the person that they want to be, and you have that in you. Like you're bringing something so unique to the table, but make sure you're doing it with the most amount of integrity that you possibly can, and that you're being a leader that that you want to be, that you should be, and that you can be, because you'll create more of you. And I think that's really important. Is you get a chance to duplicate your leadership style onto folks to make them great leaders in the future.
Well said. Awesome book recommendations. I'm familiar. I mean, Extreme Ownership is one of my favorites. Then Simon, I'm familiar with. One of the two I know. The other I'm going to put on my list because it sounds great. So awesome recommendations. And we will close out with wellness practice. So you kind of touched on faith before, which of course is a part of wellness. What does your wellness practice look like?
For me, I spend a lot of time driving, so a lot of audiobooks. I have this app called Blinkist. I don't know if you ever heard of it. So if I can't listen to all these books, it creates like kind of like guides,
Cool.
kind of give you the highlights, all these books. I spend a lot of time in that because
Cool.
like I'm a forever student, and the way I'm showing up to my team is so important to me. And I know that I make mistakes every single day, and I'm good with it. So I'm always trying to find ways to just be 1% better. Not necessarily every day, but at least every month, trying to make that constant change in my life to show up better for that group. So I think that would probably be my thing. Is I spend a lot of time reading, listening.
Cool. Yeah, I'm gonna look that up. I was not familiar, and that sounds
super cool, man. It's like
it sounds great.
$139 a year, and you get access to all these guides.
Very cool. Very cool.
Yeah.
And it's just like a library of books, or
Yeah, it is. Yeah, so all awesome. The books, and you can kind of put your interest first. So I get like a lot of the Dan Carnegie stuff, which I'm just now getting into. That guy, it's a pretty neat dude. Yeah. He's like the godfather of like self-help. I didn't know that.
Totally.
Yeah, so that was a pretty cool thing.
Very cool. All right, man. Before we close out here, anything I missed or anything you want to add?
I think the last thing I want to say is like veterans don't need to fit into a construction space. Like we elevate that space. That's what we bring. We elevate that world. The construction industry is not a fallback. It is literally for us, it's a battlefield for leaders like us to get involved in and to carve our niche. Like we know how to build teams. We know how to build trust. And we know what all of that looks like. Like, don't be scared to go try it. Get in somewhere, take hard roles, and show them what you got. And that's just going to make this space so much better for veterans that are the next generation.
Well said. Well said. Really appreciate you jumping on, man. Thank you so much for sharing your story. I learned a lot from it. I'm sure our listeners will too. Everyone who listened, thanks so much. Kevin, we'll talk real soon, man.
No, thank you so much, Adam. Really appreciate it.
Likewise. Thank you to our channel sponsors, Jet.Build. If you're looking for ways to better manage your real estate development and construction projects, look no further. Jet is the command center software for end-to-end real estate development and construction management. That's www.jet.build.